There are places that pretend to be homes, where the silence is too perfect, the doors too willing to close, where your host smiles without blinking, and the shadows press close even when the fire burns bright. Jonathan Harker's journal continues, not as travel notes, but as a slow surrender. This chapter is no longer about business. It's about suspicion, entrapment, and the creeping realization that the exit has vanished. Welcome to Chapter 3, Jonathan Harker's Journal, continued. I stand by what I wrote earlier, but not now. There's no doubt. I will not sleep anywhere the Count might be. I've hung the crucifix above my bed, and whether it's superstition or something more, I feel safer with it there. It stays. After he left me, I returned to my room. The castle was silent, no footsteps, no wind, just the heavy hush of stone and shadow. I waited, listening. When I heard nothing, I stepped out and climbed the stone stair to a window that faced south. The view was vast, mountains stretching into the distance, bathed in moonlight. It gave me a strange sense of freedom, even though I knew I couldn't reach it. Compared to the narrow, suffocating courtyard, this open expanse felt like a breath of air I couldn't quite draw. But the night is beginning to wear on me. This reversed rhythm, waking at dusk, sleeping at dawn, it's fraying my nerves. I jump at shadows, I imagine things, and yet I know there is a reason to fear, real reason. The moonlight was soft, almost golden. It turned the distant hills to mist and the valleys to velvet black. For a moment, I felt peace. But then, movement. Something shifted below me, a floor down and to the left. I leaned back into the stonework and watched. A figure emerged from a window. The Count. I didn't see his face, but I knew him by the shape of his shoulders, the way his arms moved and those hands. I've studied them too many times to not recognize them. At first I was curious, even amused. A man climbing out of his own window? But when I saw what he was doing, he wasn't climbing, he was crawling, face down. He moved down the sheer stone wall like a lizard, his cloak spreading around him like wings. I thought it must be a trick of the moonlight, a shadow, a hallucination, but no, I watched as his fingers and toes gripped the worn edges of the stone, using every crack and crevice to descend with unnatural speed. No human could move like that. What is he? What kind of creature wears the shape of a man but moves like that? The fear is back. Not the vague unease I've felt since arriving, but real, bone-deep terror. I am trapped in a place where the impossible is real, and I'm alone. May 8th, midnight. I met the Count again tonight. He greeted me with his usual courtesy, but there was something different in his eyes, something more alert, more watchful. He asked me many questions about England, our customs, our laws, our people. He wanted to know how men buy and sell property, how they marry, how they die. He asked about our cities, our streets, our prisons. He asked about our lunatic asylums. At first I answered freely, but as the questions grew more specific, more personal, I began to feel as though I was being studied. Not just my words, but my reactions, my silences. Then he asked me to describe the people of London, their habits, their weaknesses, their fears. There are so many, and they move so quickly, like ants. How does one live among them without being noticed? I told him that Londoners are used to strangers, that no one pays attention unless you give them reason. He smiled at that. Good. That is what I hoped to hear. Then he leaned forward, his voice low and deliberate. You English have a saying, do you not? Knowledge is power? I have always believed this, and I have lived long enough to see it proven again and again. He stood and walked to the window. The moonlight caught the edge of his face, casting half of it in shadow. My people were warriors. We fought for centuries, against the Turks, the Saxons, the Hungarians. We were feared. We were ruthless. And we were proud. He turned back to me, his eyes gleaming. I am the last of my kind, the last of a line that once ruled the mountains with fire and steel. But time has changed the battlefield, and now war is fought with contracts and coin. with silence and with patience. He paused, then added, "But the blood remains the same." I didn't know what to say. I felt as though I was standing at the edge of something vast and ancient, something that had been waiting for centuries to move again. He seemed to sense my discomfort and changed the subject, but the weight of his words lingered. Later, when I returned to my room, I found the crucifix still hanging above my bed. I stared at it for a long time before lying down. I don't know what the Count truly is, but I know this: he is not merely a man, and whatever he's planning in England, it has already begun. May 12th. Let me set down everything I've observed clearly, calmly, before fear clouds my thoughts again. This morning, after waking late, I spent several hours exploring the castle. I tried every door I could find. Each one was locked, not just closed, but bolted, sealed, as though the very walls were trying to keep me in. I began to feel like a ghost wandering through someone else's memory. Eventually, I found a door that opened to a winding stair. It led me to a part of the castle I hadn't seen before, an old ruined chapel. The roof had long since collapsed, and the floor was littered with broken stones and rotted wood. Dust lay thick on everything, undisturbed, no footprints, no signs of life. But there was something else. In the far corner, half hidden behind a crumbling arch, I found a heavy wooden door. It was ajar. Beyond it, a narrow passage that led downward into the earth. The air grew colder with each step, and the smell, damp stone, old earth, something metallic clung to my throat. I didn't go far, not yet, but I marked the place in my mind. I'll return when I'm better prepared. Later, I saw the Count again. He was in the library reading. He greeted me warmly, as always, and asked if I had enjoyed my day. I told him I had explored a bit. He smiled. "Good. The castle is old and full of secrets, but be careful. Some doors are best left unopened." His tone was light, but his eyes were not. I felt as though he were warning me and daring me at the same time. We spoke for a while. He asked more questions about England, about the legal system, about how one might go about acquiring multiple properties under different names. I answered as best I could, but I felt like a man giving away the keys to his own house. When I returned to my room, I found a note on the table. It was written in the Count's hand. "You will need rest. Tomorrow, I must ask you to write several letters to your employer, to your fiancé, and to your family. Tell them you are well, and that you will be staying here for a month longer. It is important." There was no request, only instruction. I will write the letters. I must. But I will also write this journal, truthfully, fully. If anything happens to me, let this be the record. I am not safe here. May 12th, later that night. I've just returned from another conversation with the Count. I can't sleep, not after what I saw, not after what I felt. He came to me in the library as he often does, just after sunset. He asked if I had written the letters he requested. I told him I had. He took them, glanced at the addresses, and smiled. "Good, very good. It is important that your friends know you are well." There was something in his voice, something too smooth, too rehearsed. He sat across from me and began to speak of England again, but this time his questions were different. He asked about the trains, how often they ran, how crowded they were. He asked about the docks, the customs officers, the night patrols. He asked about the layout of London streets, the fog, the alleys. "There are places," he said, "where a man might walk for hours and never be seen. Places where the shadows are thick and the silence is deep." I nodded, unsure of what to say. Then he asked about the asylum near Carfax. He wanted to know how it was run, how the patients were treated, and how often they escaped. "Madness is a curious thing. It reveals what the mind hides. It strips away the mask." He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on me. "Tell me, Mr. Harker, do you believe that a man can be sane in one world and mad in another?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, and my heart was pounding. He smiled again, then stood. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." And with that, he left. But I couldn't rest. I still can't. I went to the window, hoping the night air would clear my thoughts. The moon was high, casting long shadows across the courtyard. And then I saw him, the Count. He was crawling down the wall again, face first, like some monstrous insect. His cloak clung to him like wings, and his hands gripped the stone with unnatural strength. I watched until he vanished into the darkness below. I don't know where he goes. I don't know what he does. But I know this. He is not human, and I am not safe. May 15th. I've kept to my room most of the day. The Count did not visit, and I was grateful for the silence. But even in his absence, I feel watched. The walls seem to listen. The air feels thick, as if it remembers every word spoken within it. I tried the doors again, all still locked. I've memorized the patterns of the corridors now, the way the light falls through the narrow windows, the way the dust lies undisturbed in certain corners. No one walks these halls but me, and him. I've begun to notice something else. The Count is never seen during the day, not once. I've heard no footsteps, no movement, no sound of doors opening or closing. It's as if the castle sleeps with the sun. But at night, he returns, always after sunset, always with questions. Tonight he asked me to write 3 more letters, one to Mina, one to Mr. Hawkins, and one to my family. He dictated the contents himself, word for word. I was to say that I had extended my stay by choice, that I was enjoying the hospitality, that I would return in a month's time. I wrote them, I had no choice. But I also wrote this journal, and I hid it. If anything happens to me, let this be found, let someone know the truth. I am a prisoner in a castle ruled by something that wears a man's face, but is not a man. I don't yet know what he is, but I know what he is not, and I know I must find a way out. May 16th, morning. God preserve my sanity, for to what dreadful end am I to come? I hardly know how to write this. My hands are still shaking. My thoughts are scattered like leaves in a storm. But I must set it down while it's still fresh, before fear erases the edges. Last night, after the Count left me, I waited until the castle was silent. Then I crept out of my room and made my way back to the ruined chapel, the one I found days ago, with the broken roof and the cold, damp air. I brought a lantern this time. I needed to see. The door at the far end was still ajar. I slipped through and followed the narrow passage downward. The air grew colder with each step. The walls wept moisture. The silence was absolute. At the bottom I found a great stone chamber, long, low, and lined with ancient earth. The smell was thick and sweet, like rotting flowers and old blood. And there, in the center of the room, were boxes, dozens of them, rough wooden crates stacked in rows. I opened one. It was filled with earth, dark, rich soil, but that wasn't all. In the second box I found him, the Count. He lay there, motionless, his eyes open but unseeing. His skin was pale as wax, stretched tight over his bones. His mouth was slightly open, and I could see the sharp white points of his teeth. His hands were folded over his chest, the nails long and curved like claws. He looked dead. But he wasn't. There was no breath, no movement, but I could feel it. A presence. A waiting. I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then, slowly, I backed away. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I just turned and climbed the stairs, one step at a time, until I reached the chapel again. Now I sit here in my room, writing this by the light of dawn. He sleeps in the day, in the earth, like a corpse. And tonight he will rise again. I must escape, somehow, before he leaves for England, before he seals this place behind him. If I wait too long, I will never leave this castle alive. And so the journal closes, just for now. Harker's world has shifted from uneasy formality to quiet terror, each sentence heavier than the last. Whatever comes next won't knock before entering. If you found yourself drawn deeper into the shadows, consider leaving a like to help others find their way here. Subscribe to stay close as the story unfolds. Entry by entry, heartbeat by heartbeat. Your presence shapes the journey, and I'm grateful you've joined mine.